because I think it's super important for people to understand what architecture actually means and the difference, the distinction between architecture, the various different types of architecture in the things that we do, as well as the various different design patterns that we do as well. And I'm constantly learning. So if there's anything that I say that is wrong, then please do jump on the comments and let me know. And the thing about architecture, the reason why I want to dig into it is because there isn't really a set guideline as to what architecture actually is and where the boundaries of architecture are. You can look at it from various different levels of abstraction, and you can talk about software architecture in a very confined space, or in a space that is quite broad and quite global to the system. So I wrote a couple of things that I want to discuss, and again, if you have any disagreements or if you want to add anything to this, then please do let me know. So here we go. Software architecture. This is going to be an episode about software architecture. Software architecture explains the structure of a system. Think of it like a blueprint of a house or a skeleton of the human body. Each of these are maps of the highest abstraction. The blueprint of a house will show you the boundaries of the building, where the doors and the windows are to be placed. A skeleton of a human body will tell you the age, the sex, and the height of the person. These are maps that have well-defined rules that explain the what and the where, but they don't describe the how. Okay? So a blueprint does not offer any suggestions as to how the construction methods are to be used to build the doors. Okay, it may offer a suggestion as to the direction the doors must open, but they don't go into any detail about the color of the doors or what key is required and what lock is needed. Okay, think of this like the distinction between design patterns and architecture. This is kind of the route I'm kind of going into. All right. Examining a skeleton will offer you insights into the person's age, but without any other contextual knowledge, the skeleton will not give you any clues as to the type of job that was performed by that person and how they went about their day-to-day routines, right? So yeah, I mean, you could have a look at the skeleton and the things that are around the skeleton, right? Like the tools and whatnot, but the actual skeleton itself, it's not going to tell you how that person performed tasks. Okay, the difference, the key words here are the what and the where versus the how. So with software architecture, the way I was taught was that software architecture, you've got to think about the what and the where. All right, so it's like a blueprint. So what is it that this blueprint is describing? Where are these doors? Where are these windows? And how many rooms have you got? But you don't talk about what is the color of the wallpaper, or what is the mechanism of the lock of the door, okay, or what is the color of the carpet. You don't talk about that. They're not the boundaries of the architecture, they are the boundaries of the design. So when we talk about software design patterns, that's where we start playing around with the how it works, not what is working and where it's working, right? So software architecture is more abstract than the design of software in that sense. So when it comes to a software architecture, when it comes to software, the architecture describes the bigger picture and is not limited to just the software itself. So this is key. So the architecture will also define the scope of the software, the methodologies such as waterfall or agile that are used, as well as the choice of frameworks and the programming language that is required. So it goes beyond the software itself. We're now talking about the methodologies. We're talking about how the team actually work together, the sprints, the agile versus the waterfall, the ceremonies that are involved with that. All of that gets bundled into the software architecture because we're talking about the what and the where rather than the how, because we're talking about what architecture we're going to be using, where are we going to be using that. So like what ceremonies are we going to use? What programming language are we going to use? What framework are we going to use? What policies we need to adhere to? What are the technical requirements that the software engineers need to understand before they get hired? All of that stuff is bundled in software architecture, rather than talking about, well, how is the PHP going to be used, and how are we going to be creating these? How is this going to work? Is it Sprint or is it Kanban? How are the methodologies going to be put in place, rather than the what and the where? Okay, so these decisions build a strategic approach to building the system. So when you talk about software architecture, think about the strategic decisions that you make when building software, rather than the quote-unquote tactical decisions of the designing of the software. So software architecture, so one thing that I've certainly seen in my career, and is typical of a lot of places, is that software architecture and software design often get very conflated together and muddled together. And you could argue that actually that's perfectly fine, but the bigger the system, the more people that are in place, the more, unfortunately, the more regulation, policies and procedures and processes need to be put in place, which means that there's more separation involved in the architecture versus the design. The reason why architecture and design often gets muddled together is because of perhaps the size of the project and the size of the team is too small, and to even warrant the separation between the two things, right? And so a software architect will have the same hat as someone who's designing the systems, right? And not be involved in perhaps the various different, are you using Sprint versus Kanban? They're probably not worried about that, because they're probably not even using it, because they probably don't even have enough people in their team to worry about those concerns. So a project may not have enough resources or budget. There could also be a lack of knowledge in the team. So they talking from experience here, I didn't appreciate the difference between architecture and design. I just thought that when you're designing when you're designing a piece of software, you're architecting it at the same time, whereas you're actually architecting it and then you design it, right? You architect the higher abstraction pieces, and then once you've got the foundations of that done, you then start building upon it, and you start building it's like a house. Once you've got the foundations down, you can then start building upon those foundations, and you can start designing those rooms. You can design the bedroom, you can design the kitchen, you can design the hallway. But until you actually have the boundaries, where are the doors, where are the rooms, where are the windows, where is the staircase? Once you have all of that in place, then you can start looking at the design of various things. And this is where I think a lot of people get confused, because, and especially me, is because sometimes when you design something, say a house, you want to actually break a wall to make things bigger. And so you're essentially in that way of thinking, you are re-architecting. And so if you get an architect into your house to, say, build you an extension, they're going to need to look at the previous architectural drawings, the previous blueprint, to see if their new architecture is compatible with your old architecture, and what needs to be changed, and what regulations they need to follow as well. Okay, so due to the above responsibilities of software architecture and software design, they're often blended together, but it is important to know the differences between the two.